Mom. What are you doing today?
Providence Place, owned by the Sisters of Providence, an ideal rental setting for retirees to continue their active, independent lifestyles. We have bright 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, a magnificent chapel with daily mass, restaurant-style dining, and wellness and entertainment programs. Call for a tour, 413-534-9700.
Mom, call me when you're not so busy.
Coming up on this edition of Real to Real, faith leaders respond to racial injustice protests. Nick Morganelli has a look at churches in the diocese reopening their doors as folks head back to Mass. And the diocese director of the Office of Safe Environment sits down with us and shares how the Catholic Church is continuing its work in safeguarding children and vulnerable adults. These stories are coming your way next on Real to Real. Hello and welcome to Real to Real. As if the COVID-19 healthcare crisis wasn't enough, our nation now finds itself embroiled in racial unrest, which has been marked by both peaceful and extremely violent protests. Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky joined interfaith leaders and Mayor Dominic Sarno earlier this week, gathering on the steps of Springfield City Hall in a prayer vigil. The faith and community leaders expressing sorrow over the murder of 46-year-old George Floyd, an African-American, who cried out that he could not breathe as a Minneapolis police officer who is white pinned him to the ground with his knee. Carolee McGrath has our story.
More than 300 people gathered on the steps of Springfield City Hall this week for a prayer vigil in response to the death of 46-year-old George Floyd, killed by a Minneapolis police officer on Memorial Day. Springfield Bishop Mitchell Rosansky stood shoulder to shoulder with other interfaith leaders who called for an end to the sin of racism.
Loving and gracious God, your Spirit gives us the breath to breathe words of healing and peace. We ask that you receive George Floyd into the arms of your loving mercy and the peace that is eternal life. We ask that you grant unto us, who have spoken and heard these words, the courage to bring change to our world, a change that is sorely needed, and a change that only we, as your people, can effect.
The officer has been charged with second-degree murder after he was caught on camera kneeling on Floyd's neck for 8 minutes, while Floyd was on the ground with his hands handcuffed behind his back.
I want to say publicly, and I have said it before, and I will continue to say it, on behalf of the Springfield Police Department, we are a very diverse, dedicated department of young men and women who try our best day in and day out. And we are in agreement. What happened to George Floyd was egregious. What happened to Mr. Floyd is indefensible. What happened to Mr. Floyd is just plain wrong, and the officers belong in jail.
While there have been peaceful protests across the country, many have erupted into riots from Minneapolis to Atlanta to Oakland to Boston and New York, with frightening scenes of cars on fire, looting, and even violent assaults on people trying to protect their businesses.
We welcome peaceful protest. We have no issue with that whatsoever. And that is the right way to honor the legacy of Mr. Floyd. That legacy is a legacy of change, not destruction. So I ask each and every one of you that we have to remain ever vigilant.
Pastor Cooley from the United Temple Church of God in Christ helped organize the vigil. He says prayer is paramount, and even though that hearts are heavy, he says God is all powerful and offers true peace.
Police commissioner said we need peace. Have marches, but we don't have to give Satan anything. We can give it all to God. Jesus said, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. But his peace is everlasting. So I want to see peace in this city. And I want to see peace in this state. And I want to see peace in this nation. But in order to get peace, we got to put God back in it.
Congressman Richie Neal read the words of longtime civil rights leader and fellow Congressman John Lewis from Georgia.
Dr. King said the long arc of justice bends in the right direction. And I would recommend to all of you that are assembled today, John Lewis has been my friend for 32 years in the House. We've sat next to each other. He's ailing right now, but he found time to say yesterday, rioting, looting, and burning is not the way. Organize, demonstrate, sit in, stand up, and vote. Be constructive, and history has proven time and again that nonviolent, peaceful protest is the way to achieve justice and equality.
From the Vatican, Pope Francis is calling on all people of goodwill to stand together.
My friends, we cannot tolerate or turn a blind eye to racism and exclusion in any form, and yet claim to defend the sacredness of every human life. At the same time, we have to recognize that the violence of recent nights is self-destructive.
In his closing remarks, Pastor Cooley shared a conversation he had with a pastor a few years ago.
We were talking about race relations, and the person said, well, I tell you what, there's only one race. And I said, wow. He said, it's just the human race. And he said, if we all join the human race, we'll be the greatest race in the world. So that's all we got. We got each other. So let's do our best to be the best race we can be.
Reporting for Reel to Reel, I'm Carolee McGrath.
Now, earlier this week, Bishop Brzezinski issued a statement on his Facebook page urging prayer and dialogue in response to Floyd's death. Calling racial division a nationwide crisis, the bishop urges people of faith to recognize the sin of racism and promote a dialogue in which we listen attentively to hear and acknowledge the voices of those who deal with racial injustice in their daily lives. You can read the complete text of the bishop's statement on his Facebook page and also on our website, iobserve.org. And Bishop Brzezinski invites all to attend in person or via live streaming a prayer service for racial healing this coming Friday, June 12th at 5 p.m. at St. Michael's Cathedral in Springfield. Let us join our voices in prayer for racial harmony and an end to injustice. View it live next Friday at 5 p.m. on diospringfield.org. Well, last year, Pope Francis issued 2 church rules to address the global sexual abuse crisis. And earlier this year, the Pope named a new worldwide task force on sexual abuse protections. In our own Diocese of Springfield, Bishop Brzezinski announced last month the formation of an independent task force on sexual abuse response. Earlier this week, I sat down with Jeffrey Trant, director of the Diocesan Office of Safe Environment and Victim Assistance. Trant was appointed to the position last June. He is a certified licensed social worker and is currently in a doctoral program at the University of Albany, SUNY. As a social worker, he said his career has focused on children and vulnerable adults who have experienced trauma and maltreatment. I talked with him about the new protection measures and how the Catholic Church here and around the world is working to safeguard children and vulnerable adults. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for being with us today.
Good to be with you, Sharon.
So, as I said earlier, Pope Francis last year issued new protection guidelines for the Catholic Church in the world, and also that includes the Diocese of Springfield. And right about that time, you were brought on board as the Director of Safe Environment. What's been your greatest challenge so far?
The greatest challenge has been to create meaningful change to address the immediate issues that are facing the diocese, and at the same time to develop a process that allows us to confront the structural and institutional change that's needed.
Mm-hmm. So early on, you sort of revamped the investigative services for the diocese. What's your goal?
Right, so there's really 2 parts to that. The first is that early on, we engaged in discussions with the district attorneys of Western Massachusetts to develop a memorandum of understanding that was just completed recently. And what that agreement does is it sets forth a framework for how the diocese reports these allegations to law enforcement. Let's be clear, Sharon. Sexual abuse of a child or a vulnerable person is a crime. And first and foremost, it's the diocese's responsibility to make sure that we get that information to law enforcement so the information can be assessed in accordance with law. Secondly, the diocese obtained, or we went out and hired a new panel of investigators.
And also last year, the diocese asked for an investigation to be conducted by Judge Peter Vilas of Westfield. Can you fill us in on what the judge is investigating and what the status is on that?
Yeah, Sharon. So Judge Vilas is conducting an independent and outside investigation. And that in June of last year, when I joined the diocese, there was a public disagreement between the review board and a survivor who came forward courageously to share their story of abuse. And that at the end of our process, the two groups were diametrically opposed with the facts of even what happened. And so shortly after that, Bishop Rosansky and I met with this individual and heard his story. And one of the questions that was raised was, what do we do next? And at that same time, in response to a motu proprio, which is essentially the equivalent of an executive order that was issued by Pope Francis in May, there was a new process that was created for bishop accountability. And that the diocese assessed whether or not we would be able to use that new third-party process. And because the allegation against Bishop Weldon involved a deceased bishop, we weren't able to use that. And so it was essential that we have an answer for this gentleman, and that our process had failed. And that it was important that we brought in an independent and outside person to investigate that. And at the same time, it was essential that we understood what happened. And so Judge Vilas presently is conducting an investigation that first assesses the credibility of the allegation against Bishop Weldon. And in addition to that, he's answering the question, how has the Diocese of Springfield handled this matter since the first day that we were aware of it? And what are the opportunities for improvement?
Okay. So in conjunction with these findings to come, a new larger task force was appointed last month. How do you envision them taking on their charge?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Sharon, when I first came on board and conducted a review of my office's operations, it was very clear to me that there were immediate as well as long-term issues that we needed to address. At the same time, the Judge Vilas investigation started shortly thereafter, and that what Judge Vilas will provide is a report that the diocese will make public, and it will address this one specific case. And that even though there's a lot that we will learn about how the diocese handled this one case, and that there very well may be generalizability from it, there are many other issues that we have to address.
Last month, Bishop Rosansky announced the creation of a 10-member special independent task force on the response to sexual abuse within the Diocese of Springfield. The task force being chaired by retired Massachusetts Superior Court Judge Daniel Ford and vice-chaired by Irene Woods, founding executive director of the Children's Advocacy Center of Franklin County and the North Quabbin. Trant says the primary focus of the task force is to develop a strategic plan. Part of the planning method, he says, requires the planners to go out and seek additional information, talking to other stakeholders.
And I think that's really our greatest strength, is to be able to go out and to engage the community, the additional survivors, family members, members of the clergy, other members of the diocesan community, as well as the community writ large, to be able to understand what's working well as what are the needed changes. And so the task force is really charged with engaging in that broader strategic planning process to be a bridge to move us from the information and the data that Judge Vilas uncovers in his investigation, and then move us to action through a strategic planning process.
And I think from what they said at the press conference, this should be coming out soon, right? His report.
Yeah. So again, it's independent and it's outside, and so in addition to that, we did not put a deadline on when Judge Vilas's report would need to be completed, and so I'm aware that he is very involved in his work, and that he has communicated to us that it's in the final stages and that we anticipate it in the very near future.
Okay. So there obviously is a very big wound that the church needs to deal with for some time to come. How is the church addressing this?
Well, I think we've talked about a few of the initial steps that we're taking, right? So part of addressing a community level trauma and the clergy sexual abuse crisis is traumatic for the individuals who have directly been affected by their family members, and it has affected our entire church community. And so moving forward and creating, and recovering from this will require the church to become a trauma-informed church. That means that we become transparent. It means that we create a safe space for all people. And it means that we start to move towards helping our entire community recover. And so I think some of the actions that we've talked about today will be very important in helping us move in the direction of becoming a more trauma-informed church.
All right. Well, Jeff Trant, thank you so much for all of your good work that you've done so far, and for being on our team. We appreciate it. And I thank Jeff for sitting down with us. If you are aware of a minor or vulnerable adult who is the victim of abuse, you should immediately contact local law enforcement. And if this involves Catholic Church personnel, you should also call our toll-free reporting phone line at 1-800-842-9055, or you can email reportabuse@diospringfield.org. And for more information on the Office of Safe Environment and Victim Assistance, we have a link at iobserve.org. And still to come on Reel to Reel, churches in the Diocese of Springfield open their doors and parking lots for worship. And hats off to the class of 2020. It's all still to come on this edition of Reel to Reel.
The Childless of Salvation, your weekly spiritual connection. I'm Passions Brother Terrence Scanlon, your Childless host, inviting you to take time out of your busy day and join us Sunday morning. We welcome Monsignor Christopher Conley, Vicar General and Rector of St. Michael's Cathedral, as our Mass reciter and celebrate the Feast of the Most Holy Trinity. The Childless of Salvation, Sunday mornings at 10 on 22 News, WWLP, and coming up next on Fox 23, WXXA.
You are watching Reel to Reel, your window on the world around you. Here again is your Reel to Reel host, Sharon Roulier.
While this year's high school and college graduation season has been far from traditional, Catholic Communications is saluting the graduates from our local parishes and schools with our special Celebrating Catholic Graduates series. We begin this week with 3 high school grads. Rebecca Drake has their stories.
First up, Amy Marquez is a graduate of West Springfield High School and a member of Blessed Sacrament and All Souls Parish in Springfield. An honors student, she was a member of her school's Color Guard and Conservation Club and also played softball. Amy will attend American International College to study nursing. She says her Catholic faith has always been there for her when she needed guidance, and in addition to pursuing her career, her future plans include getting closer to God. Next, we honor Aiden Burke, a member of the St. Mary High School class of 2020. A 4-year honor roll student, Aiden was a 3-sport athlete, skiing, soccer, and baseball, and was a member of the 2017 Saints baseball team that won the state championship. He earned the rank of Eagle Scout earlier this year and enjoys mountain climbing adventures. Aiden is heading into the Air National Guard and hopes to one day take over his dad's construction and remodeling company. And this week we also salute another St. Mary High School graduate, Aaron O'Learsek. Aaron attained perfect attendance all 4 years at St. Mary's and played soccer, softball, and tennis. She is president of the school's National Honor Society, secretary of her class, and served on the Student Council, Key Club, and Respect Life Club. Erin plans to major in health science at Quinnipiac University and says her Catholic education provided her with a safe family environment and gave her the confidence to face the future. Congratulations to Amy, Aiden, and Erin.
And if you would like to see your graduate featured on an upcoming show, email Rebecca Drake at r.drake@diospringfield.org. Well, churches were spirit-filled once again on Pentecost weekend as most Catholic parishes resumed services. Those who went found it very different, of course, with some worshiping outdoors. Nick Morganelli takes us to masses in Dalton and Westfield and shares the joy of those who attended.
Feeling a little bit anxious, like when we heard at the last minute that we were in phase 1 of the opening, my initial thought was it was a little early. Like I would like to see some more things in our society open and see how well it went before we were the first. The one thing that I miss most with all this social distancing is the people.
On Pentecost weekend, many parishes opened. Bishop Rosansky has directed the plan for all churches based on state guidelines from the governor's office.
We've now marked all the pews. We've closed the rows that we want closed, and then we put signs on the pews marked 6 feet apart from one another so people will get a sense of what the social distancing looks like. We've gone as far as marking our church with arrows and marks on the floor. So much like some of the things you see in the supermarket, you're going to see in our church today, like a lot of signs and directions.
Music is an important part of any church service, but there's a reason for scaling it back right now.
Some churches that have had choirs and things that opened early have demonstrated the fact is that the virus can spread from a choir member to another. So we're restricting our music in the sense that we're having just one person provide the music in our choir loft. We also have taken the missalettes out of the pews.
Another health precaution was implemented at St. Agnes as well.
Do you mind if I just take your temperature real quick?
No. And if somebody has a temperature over 100.1, we're going to invite them to return to their car.
Father Chris chose to deliver communion rather than parishioners coming up to receive. Either way, we are finally able to partake of our spiritual food again. Julie Pelletier recalls the day she wasn't able to attend Mass and receive Eucharist.
The first on-stream Mass that I had from here sitting at my dining room table, I didn't expect it, but it came right up and I cried out loud. I was bawling out loud that I couldn't be here because I missed it so desperately. So when this was like, I wanted to say hallelujah. This church is home, and Father Chris is beside me. He's beyond the most wonderful person, and Deacon George as well. They're so sincere, they're so heartfelt.
We're also continuing to live stream for everybody at home. So I really want to put out a Mass that's really fulfilling for lots and lots of people. Thanks.
Well, Jesus said, "Upon this rock I will build my church," and cinder blocks is what helped create this sacred space here at Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament Church in Westfield.
We didn't have to go far from our church to find another sacred place made sacred by the celebration of the Eucharist today. Perhaps this field will never quite seem exactly the same again because we'll remember that we celebrated Mass here.
The choice to celebrate outdoors allows for less restrictive seating and greater social distancing.
And we understand that people have all different levels of comfort with what's happened. We have this beautiful field that is part of our parish land, and we thought, why not use it?
This is a glorious day. We were blessed with beautiful weather. Everything's safe.
I have to tell you, it was the most glorious moment of my life. And yet to walk down that aisle today to receive. And when Father started to cry, I could feel the tears just, I'm so glad to be home. It's like coming home. We've missed this so much.
I teared up almost receiving, which I didn't even expect.
The Baudages are one of the younger families in the parish, and their son Elliot was very content with the new look of Mass.
He is luckily completely unaffected by the situation, doesn't realize that he's wearing a little choo-choo mask some days now or not, but...
He was reading his books, playing with his Pez dispensers, which is what we did at Mass every week.
The weather cooperated for the first Masses under the tent, but what if it doesn't in the coming 3 weekends?
We're very blessed to have a beautiful parish center hall, and the capacity for us with the 40% is 130 in there. It's set right now for that, and we would have gone in there if it had rained today. We probably will in the weeks ahead look at a reservation system for people online, just so that we never have to turn people away.
Outdoor Masses have generally been showing greater attendance. At the end of June, this parish will be back inside the church, but there is work to be done.
We have a lot to do in the weeks to come to assemble cleaning teams. Having 4 Masses on a weekend and needing to sanitize and clean the church after every Mass is, as every church faces now, a big undertaking.
Bishop Mitch has posted a video and guidelines on the diocesan website for all who need more information on the changes for Mass. You can find a link to that by visiting us at iobserve.org. Returning to Mass with you, for Real to Real, I'm Nick Morganelli.
And Nick says he spoke with many parishioners who are looking forward to the day without social distancing. But for now, let's just hope for good weekend weather for those holding outdoor services. And you may also want to check with your local parish as some have altered Mass schedules. And remember that if you are uncomfortable returning to public Masses, the bishop has dispensed the obligation to attend. Some are attending weekday Masses, and many continue to watch our sister program, the Chalice of Salvation. And remember, Chalice of Salvation, Real to Real, and so many important ministries and services receive support from the annual Catholic Appeal. The appeal is still underway and in need of your help. To make a secure donation today, please log on to diospringfield.org and click on the ACA logo. Please remember those in need by supporting the annual Catholic Appeal. And for this week, that's Real to Real. As always, to keep up with all of the latest news on the Catholic Church, both here in the Diocese of Springfield and around the world, check out our news and information site, iobserve.org. Also, you can like us on Facebook at Catholic Communications. I will see you right back here next week for another edition of Real to Real, your window on the world around you. See you then.
Real to Real is a production of the Catholic Communications Corporation, funded in part by the annual Catholic Appeal, and the support of you, our faithful viewers.